My name is Delia Ruiz. I am an author and educator and the face behind Aventuras en ESL, which is a platform where I share diverse books focusing primarily on the Latina, Latinx, Hispanic culture. And on today's live session, I am hosting an amazing author, M.Garcia. She is the author of many incredible books, such as The Resolution, Even If the Sky Falls, and the latest, she has a short story here, and Our Shadows Have Claws. So I'm going to welcome her in to explore a little bit more about her author journey. Welcome, welcome everyone. Today I actually have the honor of hosting M.Garcia. She is the author of many amazing titles, including The Resolutions, Even If the Sky Falls, and she also has a short story and the latest, Our Shadows Have Claws. This book is amazing. We're going to dive deep into it today. Yes. So welcome, welcome. ¿Cómo estás? How are you? Where are you joining us from?
Hi, I'm Garcia or M.Garcia Peña. Thank you so much for having me. I hope I do you proud because I'm a little scatterbrained in all interviews, but that's the fun of it though. I'm calling from Westchester, New York. So up in the, actually, I'm like, it's not upstate, actually. I always say upstate, people are like, that's not upstate. Above the Bronx. That's where I'm going.
We're just glad that you're here because I know that you're in New York, you're in Puerto Rico, you're just like here, you're there. So I'm just excited that you get to join me today so we can dive a little bit more into your author journey because you have so many amazing books. And actually, one that I finished not too long ago was The Resolutions. And that book is amazing because just the concept of thinking, getting a group of friends and then making resolutions for each other, I was like, this is such a clever idea. So tell me a little bit about, your book, and also where did the idea come from? Was it like in your head for a while, or did it just come and you just made it into a book? Tell us a little bit about that.
Um, Thank you for the question. So I wrote The Resolutions came out in 2018. So I was writing it in 2016. And it actually came from a conversation after I finished Even If the Sky Falls, which came out in 2016. I was introduced to my editor for The Resolutions named Alex, and we got to talk about this idea that's essentially came from the fact that we both loved books that focused heavily on friendships and the power of friendships. And I grew up watching a whole lot of the classic American teen dramas that were always shown on TV, but that didn't really reflect the communities that I had grown up in. So in my conversations with Alex, we sort of talked about this idea of New Year's resolutions and the twist of having somebody else write them for you and how kind of stressful that is. Like it's super interesting, but also if you think about it, like is it slightly kind of like a jab at the person, like you're critiquing their lives. So it came from that conversation with my wonderful editor Alex, and it grew from there. And we had discussions about who these characters were and the importance of the who they play within their friendship, right? Because everyone has a role. And at one point we had Nora, who's one of the four in the book. She was completely different, and I almost wanted to kill her off. And Alex was like, no, you just got to figure out who is she playing in this relationship partnership between the four of them, and then rewrite her based on that. So it really came from that just love of friendships in books, and I wanted to create this group of just like a family in this friendship of for Puerto Rican teens, essentially.
And I love the friend dynamic. I think you do such a good job writing and developing your characters. As I was just thinking, I was like, wow, like she has the power with words in the story, so that it's just so well done. And also just thinking about the resolutions outside, I was thinking I would have to have some really good friends to
Yeah,
give
exactly.
me the rest of, like, I could not pick some random like draw a name, you give me a resolution. No. So I love the idea behind it, and I kind of want to know, are you working on any resolutions right now? Do you make resolutions? Tell us about that.
Delia, I'm just working on this year as a whole and getting through it. That's all I got. That is all I've got. Like I have a finish line, and I know time is arbitrary, but that I'm working towards those holidays for like a break. That's all. That's the only resolution I have at this point.
Hey, I think that's like a lot of us right now that we're just like looking to see when is the next little break that we
Mhm.
can kind of have in between. But you know, your story is beautiful. I love the sense that
Thank
the
you.
friends and the groups got to make the resolutions. And also in the story, one thing that I really liked and that made me really hungry were all like the baking references and all the food that was going on. I was like, I am craving all of these things now. And unfortunately, where I live, I don't have access to like a Puerto Rican like bakery store or anything like that. So I want to know behind the scenes, do you enjoy baking? Did you have to research baking if you're not a baker? Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, I love baking. That was my little cheat with Nora. I was like, I'm gonna make her a baker. So
Yeah.
I had to research all of this. So yeah, so I was making most of the recipes behind the scenes. And when I was was doing my little marketing for the resolutions, I actually had like these Instagram posts where I was doing stories, walking you through some of the recipes, and then sharing the recipe at the end. So it was marketing my books, but also could enjoy all of the delicious treats that Nora bakes in the novel, and also some of the savory ones. I made sopa de plátano as well, that I
Mm.
put up there. So yeah, absolutely. I always like including some of my passions in there, so it's like a cheat because I can sort of expand my love of certain things, and then if they're delicious things like baking, you can do that awesome research. You get to call it research while you're eating like
Right.
stuff like that.
And it gives you an excuse, like, why not go bake something? You're
Oh
like,
yeah,
I'm
like,
a
oh, I have to
book.
learn how to make a croissant, or I have to learn how to do this for the book. It's for the
Exactly.
book, so it's
That,
authentic.
that's some really good research. Like, I'm gonna take that advice. I'm gonna put some hobbies that my characters like to do and say that
Mhm.
I'm working on the
Yeah.
book. No, but that's so important. And you kind of already touched on the reason why you kind of wrote it and, you know, seeing characters that look like yourself. But could you elaborate a little bit more about why it is so important to tell stories from Latina and Latinx creators to share our stories out there? Why do you think our stories are so important to tell?
Because we're present and we're part of this wonderful, world. We exist in history that is not told or has been erased. We have been there the entire time. So I think the part of telling our stories is illuminating history that has been erased or forgotten uh, throughout the ages. Even if you're writing just, fiction or fantasy, we exist in those spaces as well. So I think it's very important to not pretend that we that we don't. And growing up, I was me plantaba al frente del televisor and I was watched like anything that was on TV. And because Latinos in general, especially, Puerto Ricans, we look like anybody. So anybody who I saw on screen was like, oh, they could be Puerto Rican. You never know, and just because it's like, she's not saying it or they're not saying it doesn't mean that they couldn't be. But at one point growing up, that sort of became not enough. Like I needed to actually have confirmation of culture on the screen, and that wasn't always possible, even though there were wonderful, people like Rosy Perez and all across Latin America actors that are coming
Mhm.
up now. Like love me some Oscar Isaac, love me some Pedro Pascal, love seeing that on the screen, love seeing my Ismael Cruz Cordova. Hello, Lord of the Rings, got some Puerto Ricans in there. So it I feel like there's not a way to explain the feeling of seeing people who represent your culture and your nationality up on the screen and doing wonderful things, and that's kind of amazing. It shows you that you can also do it. So
That's so true. And yeah, representation matters. And I'm so glad that, you know, the next generation of children growing up now have, you know, more access to these stories. And these stories are out there. And like you said, we are
mhm.
present. So I love that. I'm going to take that quote and blow it up after this. Now, going back a little bit about your books, your writing, have you always loved writing? And what was the process like for you to, you know, write and then finally get an agent, publish it? What was that process like for you?
Oh yeah, I've always written, but hadn't called myself a writer for like a huge chunk of time, because I don't know if for you growing up, I always assumed most writers were dead or like in their like late 70s or 80s. And I was like, something that was
Yeah.
done, but like years ago, and like there are no new novels being published. When eventually I learned that it is not true. But I took a long time before I realized that it was something that I could do. And there were teachers in high school and in college that were like, you could be a writer. Like, you love to write. You're a writer. This is the thing that can be done. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So it did take some time. And I did my MFA, and it was lovely. I met some wonderful people, got some wonderful school loans I'll probably never pay back. Sorry about that, government. And after that, but throughout all that entire time, I was also submitting stories that I had written, getting them rejected over and over again, because we grow as writers as we go along. And I, at that time, was not ready to be published. I have not reread any of that stuff, and I will not go and reread it. So I graduated from my MFA, and I started work at Penguin Young Readers doing marketing, because I figured if I couldn't get published, that at least I could have a job shouting about books and doing marketing for books. So somewhere along those 6 years that I was working, an editor from HarperCollins came to the MFA program to talk to all of the classes, and essentially asked if anybody would like to submit a sample of their work, that they could do so to the editors. So I submitted a sample of the YA that I had been pitching at that time, that had been rejected, I think at that point, like 45 times. So I was like, okay, it's like one more rejection. And I just like sent it in. And they responded to me, and they didn't want to publish the book that I was pitching, but they wanted me to audition for a story that they had been thinking about. So we had a conversation. I wrote down some ideas and some outlines for the story. I wrote some sample chapters from the character's point of view. I met the editor, and we had a conversation about culture and storylines and plots. And I essentially found an editor before I found an agent. And what I did is, at that point, that I went back to everyone that I was submitting for agencies, and one in particular who I was introduced to, I got a recommendation from a friend. Sometimes if you know other writers or know people who are represented by other agents, they can give you a recommendation or say like, hey, look out for Delia's submission. And that's essentially my editor friend had a friend who was looking for young adults, and I sent her an email, and I sent her a submission, and I said, if you're looking for young adults, and then we had a conversation, then hit it off, and that's how I found my agent. So I found my editor in a project first, and then I used that to snag an agent.
I love that. Yeah, because it was definitely like out of, like the normal
Exactly
sequence of going. But that's so awesome to know. And I'm so glad that you kept at it, because like, look where we are now. Look at all these stories.
It was a total of I would say about 9 years of querying before anything was signed.
Yeah.
So, and it goes by. It goes by.
But that kind of gives me hope. I think like sometimes when I hear like, oh, years, like to me it's still like, but they made it. Like, their stories are out there. So to me that's still like an inspiration. Like, hey, sometimes being in the query trenches, it's hard, but you keep at it, and hopefully they get picked up. And
you have to keep at it, because if you also think about it, there are new agents that are coming into business every year. So you're not even reaching all of the potential advocates that you have for your work out there. The piece that I submitted with never sold. I never put it, I haven't queried it again. I just continued with new ideas. I might query it again at some point. But since those, like, oh my gosh, so even if the Sky Falls came out in 2016, which means I signed for 2014, and that was like, with the math, 8 years. So 8 years since that first book was signed, and that project is still, sometimes projects don't sell and you move on and you work on the next thing, and that might be the thing that actually gets you the work that you want, and the deal that you want.
That's still amazing to know. And I'm glad that we have your stories out there now. I know that you have your two books, and then recently I've read your short story in Our Shadows Have Claws. I mean, this book is, it's amazing. I mean, the cover, you know, the collaboration of all of the authors on here, and your story in particular, I was like reading it, and I probably needed to read it during daylight, not during the dark time. I mean, just the title, La Boca del Lobo, I'm like, oh crap, like, yes, look at that picture. But I want you to tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind this short story.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'm happy that you found it disquieting or made you anxious or something. I was a little bit nervous that it was like too like in my head when I wrote it. I was like, oh my God, I don't know if this is like scary or atmospheric enough. So I'm happy that it it
Yeah,
did
I
something.
have the lights on.
So when the awesome story about this anthology is that it started with a tweet that Amparo and Shami were talking about on Twitter, and I immediately was like in Amparo's DMs, like, can I please be in this anthology? I know I've only ever written contemporary, but I really, really love horror, and I love thrillers and just any form of like fantasy and science fiction. I love it, but I hadn't written anything until that point, so I was worried that it was like, no, go back to your contemporary novels. Yeah. So
I
I
think the opposite. I would have never guessed that like you hadn't done any kind of horror short story exploration.
Oh
Like,
my God, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. That means, yeah, that makes me happy. So La Boca del Lobo came up with I came up with it on the fly. Well, that's not true. I had it started with a little bit of a vision. I don't know if you're a visual writer, that you see like little scenes in your head.
Yeah, note take. Definitely.
And the vision was a little girl being lured, but in a playful way, by a shadow on the streets of Puerto Rico. Um, and then the relationship between those two entities, the little girl and the shadow. And it came from we have a saying in Puerto Rico, más oscuro que la boca de un lobo, which is referring to the utter darkness sometimes when the lights go out, like they're out now, where there is darkness, feels like a thing, an entity that is out there and just like everywhere. And I live in San Juan, particularly in areas that the street lamps go out all the time. So there are these pockets of just like thick darkness that pop out around my neighborhood.
Mhm.
And I kept thinking of just like the shadows and the darkness moving and having this relationship with this little girl, and what that meant. The original idea was a bit more whimsical and romantic, and I emphasize the unknowing of what the intention of this shadow is in the story, which we learn at the end what the intention is, and just the playing with the unknown. And this could be something that is horrible, or this can be something that is very interesting for her, and just tried to amp that up in terms of atmosphere. And yeah, that's
No, I loved the story because you gave like a really good storyline, and then there's moments of like when there's blood and they're finding the tooth, and like I don't want to spoil for anyone who hasn't read it, but like there's like cooking moments that you're like, okay, then what happens? Like, is the child gonna get lured in, and
Mhm.
is there some sort of message at the end of what happened? So I found it really captivating. And you know, again, it's a short story collection of wonderful stories. You know, there's so many other authors included on here. But if it's a little secret, like yours is one of my favorites. It's like after because it was so good, I was like, it's a story, but it's like it hooks you in, and then I don't know. Like, I feel like everyone has to read it because if I say more, I feel like I'm gonna spoil the ending and the meaning behind everything. But I'm so happy. I'm just so happy that this book is out there. And even if it started as a tweet, I'm so happy that you all were able to collaborate and turn that vision into a reality because it is here now. And I'm just so excited that it's here. It's beautiful. But Our Shadows Have Claws, of course, it released this month and it's right in time for Halloween season, all of that. You've told us a little bit about the story. And I know that in your end, behind the scenes, you're a busy bee. You have so many things going on. I see you active in that Samosas program and the Latinx Kidlit Festival, which is happening later next month. And I'm sure so many things in between. So where do you manage to fit your writing in with all these things going on?
This is a little bit of a call out question because I haven't been able to get
That's
ready.
okay.
I have been working on a couple of pieces, but they're picture book texts. And
Mhm.
I find that because of my activity in all these other groups and all the I also work freelance, so I do a couple of other projects. The picture books and the way that it's just this encapsulated story in such a short amount of time and word count, those allow me to feel creative when sometimes I feel like I haven't gotten anything on the page. I'm like, okay, let me work on that picture book. At
Yes.
least that I can do that. I can work on those 500 pages and feel like I've done something and have told a story, instead of like going to I'm also working on a middle grade novel, but I haven't looked at it in like 6 months. So the picture working on the picture books makes me like renews that artistic creativity in me that sometimes worries that I'm no
Hey,
longer a writer because I haven't written anything.
hey, and that's completely fine because part of the writing process is taking a break and using that time and energy to think on other ideas, start on other little things. So it's all part of the writing process. But going back, you mentioned picture books. Would you like to venture into like possibly, releasing a picture book one day and throwing those ideas into picture book? Because picture books are like my heart. Like I love picture books. So if I ever saw your name on a book, I was like, give me those. I need 5 of those. I would love to see that.
I'm working on two picture books right now. One of them is on submission and the other one is still with my agent. And then I have another one that is still a draft, that I'm fighting with I don't know if it happens when you write your picture books, I'm wondering if I need to expand it or if it's just this, like when I wrote it, it's short and I was like, does it need to be longer? Like, do I need to force this? Or is this just what it is? It's just like a little moment, like a little poem. And that's the one I'm currently working on. But yeah, I am working on some picture books, so we'll see sometime in the future. We'll see what happens with them.
I'm so excited. And you're so right with picture book text. I mean, because you could have a concept book or you could have a book that really does follow like a storyline with a resolution thing. But yeah, you have to, if it is fiction, you have to try to aim for those 500 words. And then sometimes I find myself overthinking, like, I only have 200 words. Is that enough? Or now I
Yeah.
have 700. Do I have too much? So yeah, picture books are a whole different story. But yeah, it definitely allows you to tell a seed of a moment and 32 pages. And yeah, so I would love to see a picture book with your name on it one day. I think that's such an exciting venture to go into after releasing, YA and then, again with your middle grade novel as well. So we talked a little bit about your writing. We talked about, future projects right now. When do you get to rest? How do you de-stress? Because you do a lot, and even when you're not writing, I feel like you're thinking about your writing, you're working on picture book text. So how do you distress, and what kind of things do you do to take a break?
But I like to nap. No, just kidding. But when you get those naps, it like amazing. I feel like I've gotten to a different dimension and then I wake up, I don't know where I am. Those are great. What do I do to de-stress? I try to take time. Oh my God. Try to take time to read, dive into, I love graphic novels. So those are the ones that I don't know, I can consume so easily because I could just transport it into the world with the illustration and the writing. I'm currently reading, oh my gosh, actually, I'll say this because I know this is part of the quick question part, so I'm gonna save it. Baking is, I love baking. I will release so much anxiety where I'm baking, where I feel when I know I'm very anxious, when immediately I have to go like, I'm gonna make a cake. And then I'm just gonna go downstairs. My sister like, you make a cake? Like I was anxious, so I made a cake. Here you go. And then I just like shove it over there. I need to get better at doing like my yoga and my walking outside
Oh, me too.
and being outside, because I do tend to. There are days where I never see the sun, where I'm like, oh, it's darkness. I have been
Where did
inside
the
all
day
day
go?
doing work and looking at my computer. I mean, I shouldn't say TikTok, but sometimes I will just like zone out I will put like a little alarm on though, so I don't get that annoying reminder video that where they're
Oh
like, hold
yeah,
up, you've been
yeah.
here. I was like, please don't touch me. I need to know random facts right now.
Yes, it reminds me of like that Netflix screen that's like, "Are you still there?" kind of thing.
You're
And
still
it's the
watching?
same
Yes.
thing.
Leave me alone. I am still watching.
Yes, I feel like I do all of that. I mean, besides the baking, I'm not much of a person being in the kitchen, but yeah, definitely I miss the day. Some days it's already dark and
Hmm.
it sometimes it's kind of hard to fit in like taking a break in when
Yes.
you have such a busy schedule sometimes. But I'm glad that you do take those times for yourself and you're baking and you're creating and we hope to see all these little projects when they're ready to flourish. No rush.
Yeah, no, and no rush to whoever's watching. Like
Yes.
I am a slow writer. I am slow. The first two books only came out at like 2 years apart because I had a deadline imposed. They're like, you have to, otherwise it's just like,
I'll
yeah,
get to
I'll get
it.
to it eventually. Like chapter two, when, who knows?
But I think also sometimes when you do have that time and you allow that break for creativity to come in, sometimes you can create your best work. But then some people are the opposite. They're like, "Oh, I work really well under pressure."
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like there's two mediums there. So well, either ways, I'm so glad that we got to dive into a little bit about your book journey. I did not know about your author journey as far as like getting an editor first and all that. So I feel like I learned some new things about you. I learned some new things about your hobbies. And in the end, I think you expressed a very important piece about why our stories are important. And so, with that being said, before we head out and end our beautiful conversation, I really want to play a game with you that's called Get to Know the Author, where I ask you a series of just fun fact questions and we get to learn a little bit more about you. Are you ready to play?
I'm ready. I'm stressed and I'm ready. Let's go.
I'm not putting a timer or anything. Here we go. First question. Do you prefer a quiet or a loud place to write?
I'm good with both because I usually put storm sounds in my headphones and just like rev it up, and that static, that sound
Oh,
of
yeah.
wind is what I go with. So it doesn't really matter where I am as long as I have those.
Perfect. What is your favorite music to dance to?
Oh my God, probably merengue because I don't
Merengue?
dance that much. And it's usually at a wedding, at someone's wedding, and I'm just like letting go energy. I'm a
Very
bit of a stay inside nerd. So let's
good.
just understand that before we go into any other questions.
We won't dive deep into that one. No, I love that answer. What is your favorite snack?
Popcorn.
Popcorn?
I do love popcorn. And also Cheetos. I will put the not together though. Sometimes I'll also put peanut butter Reese's pieces inside the popcorn, and that's delicious. I don't know if you
Oh,
ever
that's
had
good. Salty sweet mix.
salty sweet. Yes.
Yeah. What is a place that you want to travel to?
Oh my God. There are so many places in Asia that I would love to go to. My friend Annie says that she might take me to Taiwan with her mom. So that would be awesome because I would have someone who knows where to go. Uh,
Yeah.
because that's also part of my for travel anxiety. We're like, what are we gonna do when I get there? And having someone who's like, oh, I know where to go. I was like, yes, thank you. So that would be awesome. And also probably I would love to go back to Scotland. I lived there for a year studying abroad, and it was awesome. So I would love to go back there.
Oh, that's so cool. Please share it on your story so we can kind of see where you're at. Next question. What is your favorite Puerto Rican dish?
That's
It's
a
a
good
hard
one.
one.
That's a hard one because if are we talking about appetizers, in which case I love me some sorullitos or some like alcapurrias. Those are, but like main dish, I'm kind of a classic pollo empanado with like rice and beans,
Ooh,
like delicious, just made every day, any day of the week.
can't
Pop.
go wrong with
Yeah,
that.
can't go wrong with it.
That's right. What is your favorite children's book?
Oh my God. The thing is, you sent me these questions, and I could have, and I, even when I looked at them, I was like, I don't know what my favorite children's book is.
Or the last children's book you read, maybe.
So here's the thing, and you know this because we're in the kid lit community. It's like 50% of the books we read are the last kid lit
Yeah,
books
that's true.
that we've read. But you know, Karina Nicole's Coquillas Still Sing was beautiful. And I highly recommend that. And that was also available in Spanish, translated by Amparo Ortiz. So I would recommend checking that one out. And I actually have in the background that I found when I was doing a spring cleaning, I have Aida Salazar's La Luna Dentro de Mí, which I'm going to
Oh,
read
yeah.
for my niece. And I loved that one as well. So I would recommend.
Oh, those are some really good choices. I feel I have Karina's somewhere.
Oh, yep. I see it. There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Last two questions. Or maybe last two questions. Cats or dogs?
Both. But I've only ever had dogs. But I do love, I will not turn down a kitten. But I have only had dogs and I love dogs.
Wait, do you have a dog right now?
I don't. But I have friends who have dogs and I pretend that they are mine.
There we go. And then last question. What is your, if you have one, what is your hidden talent?
Making conversations awkward is probably a good hidden talent. That it just happens. But people always ask me why I'm so organized, and I'm like, I don't know if that's a talent or like, you know, because many people have anxiety and I blame my anxiety for my organizational skills. But I don't know, but I feel like it's hidden even from me.
I think that is a talent. I think a lot of people are not so organized and they look for ways to be organized. And then
Mhm.
there's people who are naturally organized. I feel like I'm kind of the same way. I'm naturally organized where I have to have structure, even if I'm doing 50 things. Like there's an order to the madness here. So either ways, that was our last question, and I had such a great time getting to know you, and I'm just so thankful that you got to share a little bit more about your author journey and all of these wonderful books that are out there now. So where can readers find copies of your books?
Oh, so if you go to M.Garcia, I'm M.Garcia Writes across all of my social. I tried to make that as the same as possible.
That's so
So I have
helpful, by the way.
so I have a whole bunch of links on my website, but you should be able to find them on any wherever your favorite indie bookstores are or on bookshop.org. And if you do buy any of the books, I have book plates that I can send you. So you can email me and I'll send you some signed book plates for your book.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to link that on the video also. If anyone wants a book plate, we'll know where to go. And I also want to remind everyone that if you cannot buy a book, request it at your public library so others can have access to the books. And I will link all three books there too. So you have access to the ISBN number, which you can Google as well, but it'll be there too. But again, Mia, era un placer estar contigo hoy. I had so much fun
Igual,
having
igual.
this conversation. Hopefully we can see each other soon as well. And I just want to wish you the best with your writing career, with everything in between. Take a break when needed, bake a cake when you need to, have fun at it, and hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Yes. Could I say something before we go?
Of course.
If you are looking into how to help Puerto Rico after the recent hurricane and the current hurricane season, there is a whole bunch of mutual aid places on my website that do work within the communities in Puerto Rico. So if you,
Oh, I love that. I'm going to link your website. I think you have it on a tab. Is that correct?
yeah, it
Yes.
has its own page on the website.
Yeah, I was actually recently on there, so I kind of already knew where to go. So I'm gonna link that as well because that's very helpful because you can donate at any time. So yeah, very good resource to have, and I'll share that as well. Y muchas gracias, Mia. Hopefully we get to chat soon as well.
Hey, muchas gracias, and suerte with all of your writing as well.
Gracias, gracias.